Hello, you amazing people out there, and welcome to the Amazing Action Comics podcast, where we are all about independent comics. I'm one of your hosts, Angel, with John Pepe.
How's it going, Angel?
It has been a minute, brother. How are you?
Exhausted.
It's Thursday. It's a long week, and people are going to be asking, hey, why are you guys on a Thursday and releasing something on a Friday? Well, I'll tell you what, kiddies, because it is a special episode of the Indie Creator Spotlight. And we have our special guest, Kevin Learn, to talk about his book and what he's got going on. John, you excited?
I am very excited. This was, this I was very impressed with the sample that we got.
Dude, I'm going to bring him in because I was tripping out I read the book like 3 times, and I swear to God, I thought I took the pill myself, that I thought I was being roofied, where I was just like in a daze. So let's bring Kevin on so we can start talking about his book and see what's going on.
Hey!
How's it going, guys?
What's going on, Kevin?
Not much.
How are you?
Doing good. Finished the comic, and it's coming out this month, so excited to finally see it get out to the world.
All right, wonderful. All right, before we get into the comic, because we're going to definitely talk about that, we're just going to shoot back a little bit and just ask you a couple of questions in regards to the medium itself. So the comics medium has been around for a long time, and I read your bio, and I know you've done a ton of other stuff. So why don't you just tell the audience sort of like your background and then how you got into comics and what your introduction to comics was?
Sure. Around 10, I collected comics when I was like 10 to 14, right around when like Image came about. So like a few years before and then a few years after, and you guys probably remember, like it just turned into like the artwork was all over the place, like, you know, special covers. It was less about the story and the characters, and like I feel like a lot of people sort of left comics at that point. And then I went to art school, and one guy that I went to art school with, or he went to the same school. A few years later, he came out with I don't know if you've heard of Blankets.
Yes.
So he went to the same art school that I did, and he talks about a Wisconsin family growing up with religion, like out in the rural areas. So like that sort of drew me back into the medium, really, and then, you know, from there, other indie artists, really.
Okay. What was your first comic, if you can remember?
Spider-Man. Yeah, it was Spectacular Spider-Man too. But yeah, I got really heavy into the Spider-Man, X-Force, New Warriors, and I have a twin brother who also got into it. So he was in like Batman, X-Men, you know. So then I had extra comics to read from that.
Oh, nice. And then how about indie stuff? What was your first indie comic, if you can remember?
Indie, probably once I started getting back into it, like around that time, I don't think I collected anything indie, even though there was, you know, I mean, I don't know what you would consider like Mutant Turtles may have been considered indie at one point. I don't think by the 90s they were, but
yeah, the black and white version when it first came out, right?
Yeah, the violent version. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if we look at Image popping up, that would be like the first sort of like creator owned. Now they're just huge. I mean, we still call them independent, but we put them under that umbrella because everything that they produce out or publish out is creator owned. Yeah. So anything that we consider creator owned is considered independent to us.
100%. But I feel like at that point you had like all the hot shots from Marvel doing it, so it was still superstars. I feel now you have these people, you know, like sure, Kirkman's like huge now because of The Walking Dead, but at one point he wasn't. He was doing his thing, and yeah, Image still produces great, you know, creator-owned comics from people you've never even heard of. So
yeah, and they're far removed from what they initially published, which was, yes. And you're talking about the extreme age where everything was like muscles on top of muscles. Every team that came out had the same strong guy, the guy that could shoot guns, the guy that could shoot stuff. Yeah, so all of that stuff. And now it's really diversified. And, you know, when John and I review comics, and even at one point we were looking at movies that have crossed over from the graphic novels that most people didn't even realize was a graphic novel to begin with. In respects. So the indie market itself has grown so huge that most people don't even realize that a lot of the content they're consuming either on television or through movies is rooted in this medium.
Yeah, just obscure stories too. Like I'll see something based on a graphic novel, and I'll go and research, and like it's someone who's only made 2 graphic novels, but very low volume, yet they then turn it into a Netflix show or so that. I'm like, wow.
Yeah. Well, and that's where the money's at, right? Is creating something and hopefully being founded and being like the next Mark Miller to sell your entire library and make only 1 season. God, I just couldn't stand that show.
Yeah, but I mean, have you read a lot of his comics?
Yeah, I mean, I've read a lot of his older stuff. So if we're looking at what was the Nemesis? We had what was the strong guy's name? It's not Supreme. Superior. Yeah.
I love that. Original Kick-Ass and
Original Kick-Ass.
One of my favorites he did actually was that is actually from Marvel in 1985, where basically it takes place in the real world in 1985. And the Marvel universe, as it was in 1985, starts bleeding into the real world. And one of the things that Miller likes to do is whenever he can connect, he'll connect to his Millerverse. So the real world, as portrayed in this comic, is the world of Kick-Ass and Superior, because if you remember Superior, he was like that world's Christopher Reeve Superman, right? He was a movie character. So in the comic shop in the book in 1985, there's a Superior poster, like things like that. Like so I always love that, like the stealth crossover, working with
John, if you can hear me, I think you cut out. Yeah, I think your microphone came out.
Oh,
there you go. Now you're in.
Okay, cool. The other thing too, big one he did for DC, of course, everyone talks about Red Sun, Superman Red Sun, which my friend Tom Palmer Jr. actually edited, back when he was working for DC, 25 years ago. So that also I have like a neat little connection with as well, because I remember him telling me he found this story in an inventory drawer and he went to the editor and he goes, "Hey, how come no one's doing this?" And the editor's like, "Why don't you get it done?" And and of course there's been toys and adaptations of that Tom doesn't see a penny. So
and he's still doing stuff to this day, because I mean I read Magic Order, I like that. It's already going on like volume whatever it is, and Nightclub, which is on the 2nd volume, which is and he's like all over the place, and the Nemesis Rogue Gallery.
Just finished
Nightclub's came out from Comixology though, right?
So some of these they're Comixology originals that then they're going to press. Scott Snyder does a lot of these. A lot of that though, I think, is the first volume of Nightclub. I don't know about Nightclub 2.
Yeah, I didn't know there was Nightclub 2.
I think that was pre Dark Horse, because remember he made the shift over to Dark Horse. Dark Horse decided to, because Dark Horse has a lot of Netflix properties already in comic book form, Witcher, Stranger Things, they wanted all of their comic adaptations or tie-ins to be under the same publishing umbrella. So they made a move about a year ago to, as part of their deal with Mark Miller. Everything came over from Image, where it had currently been, I believe, and is now with Dark Horse. So I think that was with Big Game that happened, or just
yes,
Big Game?
That was the big crossover comic, which was great too. So I mean that's the great thing about those guys, is they're able to take their library and just jump ship whenever they want, as opposed to being part of the big 2 and playing in someone else's sandbox. All right, so then you have an art background. You've done some stuff, and then all of a sudden you have this idea that you want to create a comic. Where does that come from?
Well, for me, I did freelance illustration after I left art school. And I mean, this was 25 years ago. So at that time, magazines were existed. I read magazines. And they were getting taken up by indie comic book artists. So that's when I started like looking into like, maybe if I start making comics, I can get more into magazines. And then obviously magazines disappeared. But by that time, I had already fallen in love with making comics again. So
so have you done something previous to this project?
My twin brother teaches Korean children in Korea. And so he wrote this story about a Korean kid coming over to America and just showing the differences between the cultures, because Koreans they find our culture just as unusual as we find some things in their culture. So More for like young adult, but yeah, that was the first thing I did, and then I came up with this idea, and I tried, shopping the Korean exchange student one around. Obviously, more I felt Korean kids would like it, or Korean culture. But then I started thinking like, oh, I'll just start writing, making like an ash can, one issue, send it out, and then make another one issue. Sort of have like a loose string of a plot, and if I get any bites, then I'll make the rest of it.
Awesome. Awesome. All right, cool. So then that brings us to where you are today, which is Memoirs from the 20th Century.
Yes.
So I want to talk to you definitely about the story. So we'll get into that now, because I want to ask you questions about being sort of like this one team, do it all, the story, the art, because I know how cumbersome it can be. But yeah, talk about Memoirs of the 20th Century. Like, where did this idea spark from? What is it about?
So when I was at school, I discovered Kurt Vonnegut, and I liked his biggest book, which he became famous for, Slaughterhouse-Five. And it's about Billy Pilgrim, who sort of gets unstuck in time, and he just goes from every perspective of his life, like back and forth. And as a 20-year-old, I'm like, oh, that's an interesting idea. But as I got older, like how easy it is to go back to another moment in your life and your brain. It's just like you're jumping around sometimes inside your head, where I'm like, oh, I wonder if that's really where he got the inspiration from. Mm-hmm. And that's sort of where then the inspiration for this time travel sort of came from, like going back to a certain point in your life. But it wasn't time travel in the way you've seen like Back to the Future with the car or something. This was a pill that would take you back. You couldn't take it to the future unless you can really think of that memory. So that, I mean, you guys read it, like at the end, she's thinking of a specific memory, so she sort of jumps back to it.
Mm-hmm. And, it's interesting you brought that up, because one of the things that I did want to talk about, because you base this on a pre-existing 18th century novel, I believe.
Yeah. When I was doing some research, I found one of the first time travel stories was called Memoirs of the 20th Century, and
right.
They went to 1997, which was really close to the timeline I wanted to. So that's why I sort of borrowed the phrase and said memoirs from instead of memoirs of.
So it's interesting, because the time travel conceit you mentioned, it's not a DeLorean, or the original plan for the DeLorean was a refrigerator that gets atomic exploded. We all know this one, or other methods usually, or like H.G. Wells, it's a time machine. I mean, it's a time machine. We're always, we're always kind of stuck in that idea of, in order to facilitate time travel in fiction, because it is right now only a fictional thing. You have to have some sort of device, but there are other stories out there. I think Jack Finney, Time After Time, and I can't remember if the Christopher Reeve movie Somewhere in Time is based on a Jack Finney, but that's using sort of putting yourself in a situation in the past, living as if you were in the past, and all of a sudden you'll be transported to the past. So the idea of like taking a pill, medicine is magic, right? This pill can bring you to this point in your past. I thought it was a great hook, and it kind of does open up certain doors of validity within the story, which I think is really fascinating. Not only the question that it raises. Obviously it's easy for you to control what moment these people choose to go back in time, because you're the creator. But when I think about that question, where would I, if I took that pill, where would I go? Where would that moment be?
Yeah, where in your moment of would you go?
Where would you go? It is an unanswerable question, because there's so many different moments. There's so many different pathways. And then the neat thing that you put in there too is this idea of affecting the past or affecting the future by going to the past. So it does, it does even take it out of the realm of, because some of the Jack Finney stuff, it's like, well, did he really go back in time, or was he, was he just imagining it? It's a great book a few years ago called Time Travel: A History. I forget the author, but he looks at the roots of time travel in fiction, and then says, can we apply this to real life? Really, really neat book. So this had me thinking of all these great questions, and the validity of this experience that these characters are going through, and that great hook right at the beginning. So how much of that, as far as when she goes and talks to that gentleman at the beginning. I don't want to give away too much because
Yeah.
really experiences, but how much of that was from the original novel and how much of that did you add to your story?
I couldn't find any copies of the novel. The novel really was written from like a letter perspective. So there was like a letter from a husband to a wife or something like that. It was more just the title and the fact that they were going to the late 90s, and that's where I was going to have my protagonist go.
Oh, very cool. So the inspiration really is just the mechanism for time travel and the title. I like that because yeah, the concepts and the things that you put out there.
Yeah.
Really on first issue.
And it's tough because I want to talk about it, but I don't want to give away anything from the book because I do have questions. But I guess I can ask some of that stuff offline. But just to touch on a lot of stuff that John was saying, yeah, I mean, it was a mind trip. I read it a couple times just because I thought I was tripping.
That was my intention. Like I knew I wanted to send it out, complete the first issue and send it out to publishers and try to get someone's attention. So I wanted to try to kind of confuse them in the way where like it's sort of the first issue is a loop. There's a loop built in there.
That's all I wanted to know. So I know I'm not crazy because I said that has to be an effing loop. But then it ends. It ends on a really good cliffhanger. This is what I have to say because I know that you wrote it, you drew it, you did everything, which is fantastic. I mean, that's a feat unto itself. I mean, the only other person that I can think of off the top of my head, I know there's a couple more, but like the last one that we did was Daniel Warren Johnson. I mean, he can do it all. He can write, he can draw, he can do everything. And sort of to be able to do all of that and leave that hook at the end just left me like, you have to excuse my French. I was fucked up in the head, which is why I went back to the beginning and then realized that I was in this fucking endless loop that did not stop. So yeah. So what's going to have to happen, because I have sort of like this OCD stuff that goes on in my head. If you do not send me issue number 2, it's going to be a loop in my head forever. Yeah. But yeah, so it was really like, I've never read anything that actually did that. That caused me to go back to the beginning.
Thanks.
Where the end was the beginning and the beginning was the end. Where it really effed me up.
I've talked with Angel about this. One of my favorite things when reading a comic, because I think there's a lot of perception that comics are disposable entertainment, right? That you read it and you move on. But I love when a creator will take the time to plant things throughout the issue. And then when you get to sort of something later in the issue, you're like, wait a minute, I have to go back and I want to see what's going on here. Or in the case of Angel, going back and reading it again to see how that beginning connects with the ending and how you have that one character in 2 spots at a time. And you see that transition. Yeah. And it really falls in line of another concept of time travel that Grant Morrison put out there a few years ago. The idea that a comic book is a form of time travel. Because, and it's very similar to sort of that speech that Texas guy from Days of Confused, Matthew McConaughey has in True Detective. First, he was talking about time as that looking outside the circle, looking down and everything. So Grant Morrison says that a comic book is sort of a form of time travel because you have the ability, even more so than like a regular book or a movie where you can fast forward and rewind, where it's all laid out before you. And you're following linear, but then you can pause and you can jump back in time 3 pages and physically get there and make that connection and see that, So I that's great that was all kind of on the table in your book.
Yeah, no, and I love it when I see that in comics too. That's when I read a comic, usually I'll read it like 3 times in a weird format, like forward, backwards to pick up things.
Yep.
That's when I feel the comic's really good, is where you're going back to look and be like, what happened here exactly? To something else happen here?
Yeah. And it's working that fine line of having the reader be a little frustrated, but not frustrated enough to just drop it. Because I get really frustrated easily when I'm reading something, and if it doesn't make sense, I'm just like, F it, I can't go on. Or if it's too, like, I love Scott Snyder, but whenever he does something new, it's so damn wordy that I end up falling asleep. So he's writing all these prose in a comic, which is, picture based. But I think here my frustration is that I thought I was tripping. which was great because I've never felt that before. So you did something really clever here, which I've not seen. So kudos to you for doing that. From the creator's perspective, though, I mean, the line art was really great. The emotional faces that you had on some of the characters was really cool as well, and the color palette that you had, I really liked as well. So for me, just understanding what's your process. If you have an art background, did you do writing as well?
What my twin actually, he went to art school with me, but then he was reading books all the time. So he left art school and, got a typical degree, but he still writes all the time, and he sends me books nonstop. So like I pretty much learned from him aspects of telling the story, but also just from reading comics and seeing the pace, like the paces of good, like Mark Miller's one, because he'll have those like 5-issue miniseries, and they're so tight and so perfect. And each one you could go back and forth and look at the first page versus the last page, how he got there, how many pages were for this scene, how many pages, how he started that scene, like And another one was that Kirkman, like Walking Dead, he liked using big splash pages at the end, which always sort of like was jarring for me. So just seeing the things that other artists did always.
No, I mean, you picked it up well, because the pacing for me, I don't know about you, John, in this book was actually, it was really good. I love the classic panels. I love gutter spaces, because we talk about time travel. In our minds, the gutter spaces are really important because they fill in what happens from panel to panel. So we're already traveling in time within that. And then you've got some time shit going on around it. And so now I'm wrapped up in this pill of time between gutter spaces and your story. So it's just time travel within time travel. So it's like a fourth wall within the fourth wall break.
Yeah.
It's bonkers.
Wait,
hold on, John, because I know the part that John loved the most were the cats. Because he loves anthropomorphic stuff. And when I saw the cats, I was like, holy shit, there was some crazy stuff in there.
Yeah, that's a neat thing that guy's art hobby is to take like movie posters and put cats in them. And this is in 1999, which is because now that is a thing. It is definitely a thing now. So I thought it was really cool. A couple things for your art background I found very fascinating. You said you did a lot of freelance work. I noticed in your bio you did some illustration for like technical manuals and for biopsy results and things like that. It's like, so you have a technical art background. And some of my favorite artists when I was growing up, the guys that really turned me on to this medium, guys like Marshall Rogers, right? One of the best Batman artists of all time, was an architect and had an architectural background, and you could see that show up in his work. Guys like Neil Adams, or my friend Tom's dad, Tom Palmer, the senior, the inker, guys who worked in commercial art, doing ads for print ads and things like that, like you had wanted to go and do for magazines. I really see that in your artwork. I see a technical proficiency that where everything is exact and makes sense and is clean in the world. And I think that you really have benefited from that background, because I do feel that there are a lot of people who sort of dive into this and don't necessarily. Frank Miller has this great thing, and again, you can say what you want about Frank's work now, but Frank Miller used to have this great thing where in order to draw something, you have to understand how it's put together. If you're going to draw a bridge, you have to know a bridge is put together, a building is put together, things like that. So I find that the technical proficiency really does help immerse you into that world, and you feel like an active participant in that. So really the question is, who are some of your artistic influences, and what part of your past work do you feel really informed this project?
Well, when I was younger, I used to draw very realistic. So it took me a while to like break away from that and start working more of a comic style. But actually, bringing up Kurt Vonnegut again, there was an artist, Albert Monte. He made a version of it like 5 years ago. He's made just wonderful different graphic novels, some space kind of stuff. Actually, with Panel Syndicate, if you guys are familiar with Brian K. Vaughan's like free comic, sort of like you pay what you want. He has a whole universe series on there that is just so well drawn, and the stories are bizarre. very similar like Kurt Vonnegut. So he grabbed Slaughterhouse 5 and did it. And his characters are sort of similar to mine. Like sometimes he has like really round eyes. Another artist, the guy who did Paper Girl.
Yeah. I love it. I've met Cliff. He's a great guy, nicest guy out there.
Yeah,
I can't
he seems like such. Yeah, but yeah, his style really influenced me for this to try and control the colors. And yeah, when you see like issue 2 through 5, it jumps a little bit more. I feel like I get a better control of the colors compared to the first one. Just because I had to belt those all out together. While the first one I made sort of separate until Bloodmoon Comics came along. So.
And as far as what aspects of your previous illustration work you felt informed this project, would it be one specific thing, or was it just everything that kind of went into the soup and brewed the stock together and kind of it's all in there?
So, sort of similar to how you explained, like, the whole bridge idea, that I would research the things that I wanted to have in there, like very strongly. And I guess I got that from art school too, where they really pushed to do that kind of stuff. Research, find the things you want. Like the whole first scene, the like college apartment. That was the apartment I had when I was in college. So I really drew heavily from that, even though I don't have pictures of it. But like, I knew I could, just think of the details that were going on.
Well, you took the pill and went back to college just for that reference.
Yeah. But then even like with Google Maps, I was able to go outside and go on Google Maps to get out, the views of buildings that I knew in Milwaukee that I wanted to use, since that's where I went to.
Like even the airport scene, like you felt like you were in an airport. I thought it was you really captured a lot of that really well. The details, like I said, were really fantastic. And I think again, it's that background, really did help inform it. Yes. Great.
Yeah, and you know what though, and I think you hit the nail on the head, John, with that technical background, because the art is clean. The lines are clean, and I think each line is there with purpose. So there isn't any wasted like lines on the page, which I appreciate. It's different when you're looking at different art. I mean, you look at certain artists where they have just so much detail, still beautiful, and then you look at something that's a little bit more simple, it's still just as beautiful. So I think, capturing mood and with the color and the line work was spot on. Kevin, just talk a little bit about your process, because I know you have an art background, but did you have a script fully done and then draw, or were you like writing and drawing at the same time?
On earlier projects, I would write it all out, draw it all out, and then try to send it to publish it. I had a few other ideas before the Korean foreign exchange student. And I would do all that work and then get, nobody hitting it. So when I wanted to like do a basket of number 1 issues, and I did this one, like I mapped out the whole first issue, getting that like loop that I wanted people's minds to get stuck in until I got it perfect. Drew that out and colored everything perfectly, and had a loose idea of what issue 2 through 10 or 5, depending on the publisher. Like Bloodmoon said, if you can do it in 5, try it in 5. So then once I found Bloodmoon, then I'm like, oh great, now I have to figure out how to do the rest of this in the book. So that's where then like pretty much the last year and a half.
So then that'll bring me to my next question. Do you have an ending?
I have a clear ending to this story, but I also sort of leave it open if I want to keep playing with these characters. I did like the characters and the whole of the pill too, the whole idea of.
No, that was great, because I think I was listening to, I don't know when it was Todd McFarlane, and he was being interviewed or something, and there was the one thing, it was like, just have the ending in play. Maybe it wasn't, maybe it was Robert Kirkman. It was one of these guys, and they were like, have the ending, no matter how long it takes to get there, 5 issues, 10 issues, 50 issues, just know it's how it's going to end. And you can always fill in the in-between. So that's great. Because sometimes I ask creators if they have an ending, and they're like, no, they're still working on it. I'm like, then you don't have a complete story. Just have the ending, know how it's going to finish. You can always fill in the gaps later on with as many issues as you want.
100%. And what I felt like, I built the outline. And so, then like, I found the ending that I wanted, and then certain middle pieces, and then there was just gaps. So then like, while I was making it, I was trying to fill in those gaps with appropriate storylines that made sense, or
Okay. So the medium that you're working with, are you doing, pencil to paper? You work on a computer? You're doing everything?
Computer, yeah, on a Wacom tablet.
On a Wacom tablet. So everything is digital.
Yeah.
All right. So even the covers and everything?
Yeah. Everything is digital.
Here's my advice, because I do the same thing, because digital is so much, layers, erasing timing. Yeah. I do all my covers in pen and ink.
Wow, really?
But then all the interiors are digital. Only because when I do shows, I don't know if you've done shows, you have original art that you have there, and it's of all the covers that you make.
That's
just my 2 cents, because everything is almost done digitally now. And now, because I collect art as well, and so we're finding art from 80s image era. I won't get art pre 80s because it's just out of my wheelhouse as far as what I can burn from my pocket. But every now and then you find a gem. But the more that we keep just using the digital stuff, the less and less we're going to get of this original art that people collect, stuff like that.
No, 100%. I agree. But it's also difficult, where especially independent, comic creators to just roll out that many pages. You have to always try to be efficient as you can. I was amazed it took me, a year and a half to write and produce 88 pages, because I already had the first 22 pretty much done. But
that's actually really good. That's really good, because there's a lot of artists that can't do that in that amount of time. That's really
good. It was a stressful year and a half. It was very
Now let me ask you another question. Did you always want to do it by yourself, or have you previously worked with other people? How do you find working with other people, if you have?
I do like working with other people. There's always I worked with some horror anthologies to just try to find a basis for, and so I'd have to deal with writers, and some of them were interesting, and then some of them were just really
yeah, you said it all. It's just part of what it is that we do, and and it's even more so in the creative market, where there's people that have fantastic ideas, people that are really ambitious, but there's a lot of fallout and just not coming through on things. And sometimes you butt heads, and sometimes you get ghosted. I've been ghosted plenty of times, and it's just it's frustrating, because we want to get things done and to find that right person to work with. And I understand why a lot of people do what they do on their own, but then it's even more time consuming as well. Yeah. Now, when you get a project done, do you have fresh eyes look at it and give you feedback, or do you just send it to the publisher?
In this case, because I thought, the publisher was going to try to get it out in last June, came across printing and distribution issues, so it was delayed. So I just sent them all straight to him, but I have had people read them, and they've given me great feedback. So
awesome. Yeah, because I've met plenty of people who don't like feedback at all. That was great. All right, so you've gone the publishing route as well. So how did you get hooked up with Bloodmoon Comics? Because I think we've gotten a couple of books at the store under that imprint. I've not read anything yet from them. They've come to the store, but how'd you get hooked up with them?
I was looking around for something that I thought a time traveling story would work. I honestly felt it was a long shot for Bloodmoon. I didn't think because they look very heavy horror.
Right.
Doesn't really fit into it. And then also my style isn't really, blood everywhere kind of stuff. It does get violent later on, but I sent it to them, and they were game from day one. I was very surprised, because I only sent it to 3 other publishers before, and I sent it to Bloodmoon the next day. They said, "Hey, we'll have a contract to you next week." So,
cool.
Yeah.
I like that.
If I'm not mistaken, Bloodmoon is the publisher that foregoes the 99-cent price point, and I think they do them at the 95-cent price point.
Their ending prices, yes.
Their ending price
Some
is
of their
95 cents, yes, $5.99, 95.
You do that, yeah.
Yeah, that makes them stand out for me on the retail end. When you're putting books in price order and stuff. Do you where does the book stand? When is it actually going to be coming out? And the elephant in the room, how will it be getting out?
Yeah, so issue 1 is now out this month.
Okay.
From what I've heard, at least from people who have ordered it, they've received the comic. I don't know how much anyone's putting them to pull lists for comic shops, but I feel like their mailing out from Bloodmoon Comics has been working out so far.
So Bloodmoon is direct distributing. They're not going through a distribution service.
From my knowledge, I'd have to double check with Keith at Bloodmoon. But
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, maybe they're doing both. I know they're on the site because I'm on the site now, so you guys can definitely go to Bloodmoon Comics LLC.com, and you'll see the books there, which is pretty cool. And it's funny because you're right. I mean, every book that we've gotten has just been horror, and I'm looking on their site. It's just horror, and then it's just like your book.
Horror.
It pops out.
Blood and violence, and then
well, it's good because then that just means they're expanding as well. But I love their slogan: "We are horror, science fiction, and fantasy." So you fall under there somewhere.
Yeah. No, you said there is some sort of violence or horrific elements towards the end. Did you have to throw that in at Bloodmoon's request just to?
No. I just really wanted to ramp up, and I felt like. Violence is always, especially with the characters, like it was going to happen where conflict would lead to some sort of violent altercation.
Considering the way the first issue escalates and then wraps around, as we talked about before, you can sort of, you could see a confrontation. So again, that's a testament to the pacing of the first issue and then the pacing of the whole story. 5 issues released monthly?
Correct, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. I see covers 1, 1, 2, 2B, 3A. You got some covers on here, bro.
I love your homage. I'm a sucker for an homage cover, man, and I love the album cover homages. Those are brilliant. Yeah.
And that Keith at Bloodmoon was like, hey, people really like multiple covers, and I was scratching my head on what to use, and I'm like, oh, I'm sending the character back to the 90s. Let's just take these 90s covers and put the characters in them. So.
Really, really cool technique. And that's the other thing I wanted to call out as well. A lot of times, as men of a certain age, right? We have memories of 99, or at least the ones that decided to stay with us, with the brain cells that stayed with us. Because again, we were in college. Well, I was out of college by 99, but yeah. So it always upsets me when someone does something set in a time period, but the references are all off. And so the references you put in there were great, perfect for the time period. And then I also really liked the sort of subtle modern political reference that you kind of threw in there, real subtle, and I really like that.
The Corona part?
And then he told people on live TV to
inject themselves.
So I really liked it because it was a great way for the reader to kind of know, okay, this is where this part of the story is taking place. It is in this time period, and then the 1999 time period references were exact.
Yeah.
So it's just a little.
That reference was also for the drug ads that we see every day. Like we're just so much, and the weight loss ones too. I mean, that's sort of why I think I went with the pill too, where like we're just there now, pills, shots, whatever, all over the place now. So
that the idea that again, by making it a medication or a pill does really make it a little more topical. And you take away the time travel trappings, and that there is going to be a serious sort of message about, hey, what are we putting into our bodies and why?
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that was cool. I like this. I'm still tripping. So yeah, you did your job, Kevin. Really, really well.
Kevin, we read a lot of first issues, and I really want to say that this is one of the most impressed I have been by a first issue of something. I really wish you all the success with this. I really want everybody to kind of grab this. I'm going to see what I can do about getting this in the shop so I can push this. And I mentioned I met Cliff Chang. I also had met Kurt Vonnegut. He spoke at my college when I was there in the mid '90s or early '90s, early to mid '90s. And I didn't know the man well. Like I said, I just saw him speak and shook his hand once, but I think this is something he would have rocked. I think he would have really been.
Yeah. Good stuff. All right, kiddies. Yeah, you heard it here. So Memoirs from the 20th Century. You can get a copy of yours at bloodmooncomicsllc.com. I'm going to put all this stuff, including Kevin's bio and how you can reach him, in the notes for you guys to have that. All right, Kevin, before we leave, we always ask this one question. As a creator, what is your advice for up-and-coming creators that are looking to do what you've done?
That's a good question.
It always catches everybody off guard.
I would say probably just open your eyes more, pay attention to when you're drawing and stuff like that. I feel like I took the hard way around to find everything I needed to create pages, to write it, everything, instead of taking advice from people who have gone through the same trials. So I'd say like open your eyes to what other people are doing, and they're doing things for a reason, because it's, you know, it's effective, but, you know, then put your own style on top of that instead of trying to lead your own way and then, you know, taking a while to find where you wanted to go. So.
Awesome. All right, Kevin, listen, it was great having you on. Like John said, we wish you the best with this. You put me in a tough spot. Now I'm gonna have to go and buy issue number 2 because I need to get it out of my system. But yeah, listen, when it's all said and done, we'd love to have you back on later on, see if you got another project going on. This was fantastic. Yeah, all the best of luck to you.
Kevin, if you're ever on the East Coast, come on down to Joker's Child in Fair Lawn, New Jersey, and bring.
Dude, he's in Manhattan.
Yeah. Oh, you're in Manhattan.
Yes.
Oh, this takes place in the Midwest. Yes. Oh, well, even better. Come on down to Fair Lawn, New Jersey. It's a shorter trip than I was thinking, and bring some copies of your book too, man. I'd love to meet you in person, shake your hand again, and any chance I can have to get this into people's hands. I really want to take advantage of that.
Awesome. Thanks. Yeah. Yep. We'll do.
Good stuff. All right, kiddies, that's all that we have for you today. So if you like what you heard, subscribe to the podcast. Better yet, invite 100 of your friends, 1,000 of your friends to come and join us. If you're a creator like Kevin and want to come on to the show, talk about your book, what you got coming up, amazingactioncomics.com/podcast. We'd love to have you on. Stay up to date on everything that we've got going on at amazingactioncomics.com. And like John mentioned, please support your local comic shops, because without them, we would not be able to do what we're doing. So until next time, kiddies, be amazing, stay amazing,